Hi, Senator Scott Jensen. I represent Carver County in the Minnesota State Senate, and I'm also a family doctor. I had 3 patients today that I think need to be discussed with you. First, I had a question from my first patient of the day who wanted to know what my understanding was regarding why the Minnesota Department of Health has indicated that they will be de-emphasizing the metric on their dashboard that has been identified as the doubling time. The doubling time basically is how many days does it take for the number of COVID cases to double? Well, yesterday in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, there was an announcement that the Department of Health would be instead looking at the number of new cases per 100,000 instead of the doubling time. I understand that as the numbers get bigger and bigger, the doubling time potentially becomes less significant. And I called a couple epidemiologists, and I also called one of the journalists that I know who does a lot of the data analysis to talk that over with them. But I do have concerns with the fact that the Department of Health has now indicated that they're going to count new cases per 100,000 people. Our present number in Minnesota is 7.7, and the Department of Health has indicated that our goal will be less than 5. When I read that, that made me feel like, gee, we're not doing so well. It also made me feel like there was a little bit of a club hanging over my head, where if we couldn't get the job done and get less than 5, that might justify more draconian mitigation measures like more lockdowns and things like that. That's problematic for me because I think Minnesota's been doing very well. In addition, if you look at the Midwestern states, we are not the high number in regards to the number of cases per 100,000 at 7.7. We're in the middle of the pack. So again, this bothers me because it feels like fear-mongering. Quite frankly, I think that Minnesota has done well. If someone had asked me 3 weeks ago what I would like to see, I would say, I'm hoping that we don't see a peak or a surge resulting from the riots or the demonstrations, and we did not. I would also say, I hope that we see decreased hospital use and decreased ICU usage. And we have seen that. Both of the hospital and ICU parameters have decreased. I also would have said, I would like to see the death rate decreasing, and it has. And I also would have said, I would like to continue to see us moving towards herd immunity by having middle of the population getting the disease, getting through it readily, so that we can continue to move toward that herd immunity that Dr. Mike Osterholm has spoken to so much. All of those things have happened in the last 3 weeks. And yesterday, Governor Walz said that 3 weeks ago, he felt much more comfortable that he'd be able to get the kids back in school in the fall, but now he's not so sure. I am completely flabbergasted by that. To me, the last 3 weeks have brought no surge despite riots and demonstrations. We have seen hospital and ICU usage decrease. We have seen death rate decrease. We have seen increasing number of cases, and a lot of those have been in the population between 20 and 60. We have seen new calculations of case fatality rates by a variety of people, but a couple of professors at Stanford have come out indicating that if you're under 70, the case fatality rate may well be 0.04%, and that is less than a typical flu season. Another patient I saw this morning was a mom. She wants her kids in school, and she says, why the hesitation? Why do we have to wait till the end of the month before Governor Walz tells us that we can put our kids back in school? I told her, I said, I don't know. But I do know that the American Academy of Pediatrics has come out with a recommendation to get the kids back in school. Quite frankly, there are things happening to kids when they're living in a world of fear, with everybody having a mask on and not going to school and not getting a chance to work with professional teachers in their reading skills and their mathematics skills. We need to get the kids back in school in the fall, this September, and we don't need to wait till July 27th to make that decision. Governor Walz, say yes. Let the teachers, let the administrators, let them work this out. Let's have some personal responsibility. Our teachers want to do the right things. Our schools want to do the right things. Our school districts want to do the right thing. We need to move forward. We do not need to have the entire state pivot on what you say on July 27th. It isn't healthy. And lastly, I just got done seeing a patient in his mid-80s who was in the hospital for 2 to 3 weeks with COVID-19. When he was there, he had signed a paper saying no ventilators. 3 times his family was queried by hospital staff saying, we need to put this person on a ventilator or he may die. The family held strong, said, no ventilators. If he dies, he dies, but that's not where we're going. Well, he did fine without a ventilator. Now, this is just one case, and I'm not trying to give you medical advice. I just want you to know that this is a complex situation. And in this specific situation for this patient, who we'll call John Doe, John benefited from all that we learned in New York City, where we learned that caution with ventilators is appropriate because simply jacking up the pressure by which we force air into the lungs might not be the ideal response. So we're learning as we go. It's fluid. The fact that New York City and the doctors and the nurses there have taught the rest of the country is something we should be thankful for. But this patient of mine was discharged on oxygen, and he's steadily been able to reduce his oxygen, and he's feeling well, and his spirits are good. And you know what? He's back to running his business. So these are 3 patients: a mom, a recovering elderly person, and a person who's concerned about why are we not using doubling times, and why have we shifted to a metric that makes Minnesota not look so good. And one final thing I'd like to share. In nursing homes in Minnesota, we have some 50,000 plus people living in nursing homes and long-term care. Soberingly, approximately 25% of those people die every year in a normal situation. This year in Minnesota, we've had some 1,100 to 1,200 deaths of people in long-term care facilities. In other words, somewhere around 2% of our long-term care population has passed from COVID-19. That's saddening to say the least. But that's 2%. And every year, without COVID-19, we have 25% die in those facilities. The average length of stay in many facilities is 15 months or less. We need that contextual understanding to realize what those numbers mean. But what we also need to realize is this year, something we haven't done before. So many of those people who died in the long-term care facilities, we told them, you're going to have to go it alone. There's not going to be anybody there to hold your hand or give you a hug or sing hymns. You're going to go it alone. And that, my friends, will be one of the legacy responses when we look back on this COVID-19. Thanks for listening.